Welcome to the MADA safety training site on the YouTube Loss Control channel. In this video, we're going to talk to managers, supervisors, and owners about preventing workplace violence, specifically how to set up a workplace violence prevention program in your dealership and how to administer it properly. Setting up a dealership workplace violence program, we're going to talk about 7 different areas today. Creating and enforcing a policy that prevents harassment, creating an effective line of communication with employees, providing training to employees, establishing a zero-tolerance policy on threatening language or behavior in the dealership, demonstrating respect in the workplace, how to show value for your team members, communicating what qualifies as unacceptable behavior, what the potential consequences from anybody breaching the policy of the dealership, and overall to have a plan, such as code words, communications, when to shelter, evacuate, etc. Let's start with talking about the harassment policy. Your dealerships need to have a firm policy preventing harassment in the workplace. And by harassment, we're also including threatening language, acts of intimidation, unresolved conflicts, etc. Make sure that this policy is well communicated and strictly enforced with all employees. And then provide training to all employees on what is and what is not acceptable language and behavior in the workplace, and what the potential consequences are for breaking this code of conduct. Communication is extremely important. Create a culture of communication in the dealership. Encourage all employees to report harassing, threatening, or violent acts to their supervisors, whether from a coworker or from a customer that they've interacted with. Take all reports seriously. Be willing to discipline any supervisor or manager who willingly and blatantly ignores or downplays a report of threatening language or behavior from a subordinate. Act upon reports received. Even if no action is going to be taken, it's important to follow up with the employee making the report and letting them know that their feedback was taken seriously by the dealership, even if no action is going to be taken. This is important. If you don't do this, employees will pretty quickly stop reporting and letting you know of any potential risks or serious conflicts that are going on in the dealership, or that they witness in the dealership. Let's talk a little bit about training. It's critical to provide adequate training to the employees on workplace violence, including how to recognize threatening languages or acts, recognizing at-risk body language and actions that could indicate possible workplace violence, maybe even just listening to the little voice that tells you something is wrong. I sometimes think that that little voice is God's way of saying, wake up, something's not right here. Okay, de-escalating skills for conflicts, verbal skills, how to talk people down, how to statements like, I might understand the way you feel, etc. To remain calm and not take verbal assaults personally. This is important training also. To remain professional during points of conflict and seek out a solution. Phrases such as, I can understand how you'd feel, I might feel the same way, or let me help find a solution, or even I'm happy to work with you to fix this issue if we can, etc. Shows respect for the conflict and the person in the conflict and is non-threatening language. De-escalating verbal skills is an important training that employees need as well. Have all employees complete the surviving an active shooter training that MADA provides. A lot of good information in that on how to survive in the event of an active shooter occurs, and a little bit about the psyche of how that happens and how those situations arise. And then also training on the dealership's plan, including taking shelter, evacuation routes or procedures, alarm, code words, who calls 911, etc. Let's talk about a zero-tolerance policy for threatening behavior. We really recommend that the dealership has a zero-tolerance policy for any type of threatening language, intimidating behavior, etc. We're not here to tell you what that discipline looks like. We're just here to tell you that discipline is important and it definitely needs to be a part of this plan. Whatever the dealership owner and management feels is appropriate is what should be pursued. Policy needs to be in writing, distributed to, and signed by all employees. Policy needs to concisely communicate what possible consequences to prohibited behavior are. Policy needs to be strictly enforced. If you don't enforce it, it's just a piece of paper. Policy and plan needs to identify dealerships' response to threatening behaviors from customers. What happens when it's an irate customer and maybe it's a repeat situation, or the customer becomes violent, or the customer becomes threatening? Does the dealership fire the customer? Do they call 911? What is the employee to do? It's all important to have this established as to what the company's policies and process is in the event of an irate customer. Breed a culture of respect. A lot of times workplace violence acts, if we study them, and we have studied them extensively, a lot of times it's just a fact of respect. Somebody may be upset, somebody may be unhappy because warranty didn't pay for something. They may just be wanting somebody to listen. It might just be the service manager saying, "Sir, I certainly understand how you can be upset. If you calm down a second, happy to help you work this out if we can possible. What can we do for you?" Customer may just that respect might go a long way in defusing a situation. Demand respect from employees towards management and other employees. Don't allow employees to be disrespectful with each other, and certainly don't allow managers to be demeaning or disrespectful to employees. Don't ever allow a manager to threaten or belittle an employee. Employees are to be corrected and disciplined with professionalism and not personal attacks. I've been in a lot of dealerships over the years of working with MADA, and unfortunately I'm here to tell you that I have heard from a distance managers and how some managers demean and talk to employees. This is not good. Don't allow this. This can cause a lot of issues and a lot of problems for the dealership in terms of lawsuits, let alone workplace violence potentials. Don't allow managers to be unprofessional. Take a sidebar with the manager and have a conversation with him, tell him what's expected and how they're expected to interact with their employees also. Set the pace. Treat all employees with respect. Foster a culture of respect for all. Lead by example. And that goes from everybody from the top to the GM to department managers. If you lead by example, show them respect, it's much more likely for the employees to know how to treat each other, and I think the employees would honestly react to that positively. Include swift consequences in a policy to any employer or manager that intimidates, belittles, or threatens a dealership customer, no matter what the customer says or does. Create and enforce a culture of professionalism here also. See again training for employees on de-escalation techniques and not taking comments from customers personally. However, I think it's also important to train your employees and empower them that they are not expected to be punching bags. They don't have to stand there and continue taking continued abuse. Have some training and process in place on who interacts and who stops that if a customer just wants to be continually abusive. Train them on how to remain professional and positive, but not to continue to be abused. Communicate and train exactly on what constitutes unacceptable behavior. In your training, you need to include examples of what constitutes unacceptable behavior. Maybe examples of banter and interactions are not acceptable. Maybe examples of harassing type actions and threatening behavior. You need to discuss what types of weapons the dealership prohibits, or does the dealership allow. Some dealerships allow concealed carry, for instance. But there needs to be a discussion on what is allowed or what is prohibited based upon your particular dealership's policies. Role play or give examples of how to de-escalate conflict. Not a bad idea in training to have two people, one playing an irate customer and the other one has an opportunity, the employee has an opportunity to come back and with phrases of trying to reach a common ground or to de-escalate, or positive words and not aggressive words. Okay? Train on how to communicate unresolved conflicts that may arise to threatening behavior or violent acts. Have a plan. We're going to talk about a written plan, the importance of a written plan. Establish a written plan for workplace violence prevention. Plan should include training methods, contents, and resources. Active shooter training for all employees. Unfortunately, in the world that we live in, There's a lot of these events that we see on the news. We just had a dealership not long ago in the Kansas City area that had a sales manager shot. It was an active shooter event. If you have not provided that training, you need to provide that training to all employees. Give MADA a call. We'll set something up for you. We also have resources online if you want to do something a little more subtle that you can use with employees also. Discuss consequences and employee accountability, evacuation procedures, rally points, accounting for all employees once evacuated, etc. Who's responsible for the plan, employee and management responsibilities, who the coordinator for the program is going to be, who can employees go to if they need information, who do they communicate to, updates as needed to the program, etc. And really just an overall view of how the dealership is going to enact, implement, and monitor a workplace violence program. So in conclusion, we've talked about a lot of stuff today, and in the last 10 minutes we've gone pretty fast. I would encourage you guys to go back through the slides. The slides are also available on our website. If you want to look at it as a PowerPoint format, go back through the video. Contact us with any questions, or if you need resources, or if you want to schedule training, we're happy to put that together for you. If we don't have the training, we can find companies that do provide the training. Or if you want to go to maybe a different level on training with a local police department or security companies, we can help you find that kind of information also. Unfortunately, we've all had unreasonable or irate customers. We've also had employees with conflicts. You need a plan to address these issues safely and professionally on all levels. And again, in the world we live in, violence happens frequently, and it can happen to your dealership. According to OSHA, there are over 2 million acts of workplace violence committed per year. It's important to be prepared, and again, just contact us if we can help. That concludes the video on supervisor training for workplace violence prevention. We hope everybody has a safe and blessed day.